WNST Tass in Baltimore and WNST.net. I bring a lot of different guests on here, and I guess over the summer I'm going to try to find more people that are going down to the Olympics, and I guess with the death of Ali over the weekend, an Olympic story as well as all sorts of other stories, and certainly Ali lighting the torch in Atlanta in 1996 and seeing all that. And it's never a bad time to bring this guy on. He's one of our defending champions, one of my favorite guests to bring on. It says Washington Post on the title, but don't let that fool you. Dude lives somewhere between Fells Point and Canton. He's here in Baltimore. He is Dave Sheinin, staff writer, longtime writer for the Washington Post, who will be enduring all those challenges in Brazil as he did in Russia and where some of the toilets actually worked. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Dave Sheinin and at the Washington Post. Sheinin, what's going on, man? I haven't had you on in a while. It's great to catch up with you.
Yeah, man, lots going on, isn't there?
Well, yeah. I mean, from you writing about Donald Trump golf stories and running around with the U.S. Open later in the week and chasing these swimmers around this summer, but then the death of Ali. Let's start with that, and then we'll get into the Olympics, because I think when the Olympics get going, Ali's tied to so many things, right? He's tied to the Vietnam War. He's tied to Howard Cosell. I think he's tied to modern media. The most famous guy in the world died over the weekend, and I think we all wondered how that would look and feel and what will be said. The one thing I would say, for you being the writer that you are and me aspiring to be that kind of writer, boy, it sure made for an interesting weekend of reading, because there was some great writing done around Ali.
Oh, my God, you're so right. I mean, just think about some of the great writers who have tackled him in books and magazines. Gay Talese, David Remnick,
Hunter S. Thompson.
Mark Cram, Hunter S. Thompson, absolutely. Thomas Hauser, Davis Miller, and to go back and read some of those old pieces, and then to see some of these great writers reflecting on Ali. My personal favorite, the guy who was always my sort of mentor, my idol in sports writing, Dave Kindred, longtime columnist in Atlanta, Louisville, and also the Washington Post. I mean, wrote an amazing piece on Ali at Fox Sports. There's just been, I think I wrote in one of the stories I did this weekend, and I don't put myself in the same category as those folks at all, but I wrote that no one in history has inspired more great sports writing than Ali.
I would absolutely agree with that, Dave. And I saw that by lunchtime Saturday. And I'm not talking about the stuff that was written in the 70s or the 80s about him or those long-form pieces. It was just more like, I woke up this morning and Ali died. I've got to write something. And immediately, like from the heart, and I don't mean 140 characters, I mean real writing and real storytelling. I busted out my picture of meeting Ali at the Super Bowl in Atlanta in 2000. And, I sat in a room with the 300-400 sports writers watching Ali watch Mike Tyson fight. So that was my 1 hour with Muhammad Ali in my life, but I think everybody has had a story, because if you're a guy like you or a guy like me at an age like we are, back in the 70s, this is part of what made us want to be sports writers, want to be involved in sports, was this, and I think want to be involved in media, because Ali brought out the best in Cosell and vice versa, and we've seen a lot of stories about that, but they sort of invented the modern sports media and how athletes and the jockocracy and the media kind of work together. They laid the foundation for that.
Well, there's no question. I mean, he was groundbreaking in many, many regards, and that's one of them. I mean, obviously the first sort of, activist athlete taking social stands and speaking out against, racism and, even the Vietnam War. I mean, that was not done in that day.
And at a hell of a price to himself, quite frankly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to give up 3.5 years of your prime, I mean, years where he could have been making gazillions of dollars, all, for a principled stand. I mean, and at the time, it's hard to remember now just how unpopular he was with so many people. He was a polarizing figure, and for him to morph from that into the most beloved figure probably on the face of the earth, behind possibly the Pope. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing journey.
Dave Sheinin here from the Washington Post. All right, off of all things Ali and moving that into the Olympics, you're gearing up. You know, you're one of, 100 people in America who really cover this for a newspaper, who are going to be down there writing and looking for stories. You've done several Olympics, and I guess, what are we, about 6 weeks out on you leaving for Brazil at this point? Give me a full primer on everything that's on your mind as you're preparing to go down there, not just from a competitive standpoint, but from a logistical standpoint, because that's where we are with the Olympics when they have them in these countries that have not hosted things like this, the Sochis, the Brazils. I think it's a little nerve-wracking for even a guy like you to go down there and logistically sort of sort it out. You're going to be living down there for a month, right?
Yeah, I am, and I mean, people ask me all the time, if I'm worried about Zika or worried about this or that, and honestly, I'm not. If you think back, there's always dire predictions about these Olympics. There's terrorist concerns, or there's smog in Beijing, and I remember there were terrorism concerns in Sochi. There was this Black Widow bomber supposedly who was targeting and nothing ever really happens. Or it's very rare that it happens. Zika. If you're not looking to have a baby in your family, if your wife and you are not trying to get pregnant, and she's not down there, and you're not bringing something back, and I don't think that's a big issue. I think it's the middle of winter in Brazil in August. There's not going to be that many mosquitoes to begin with. You might have a worse Zika outbreak here in Maryland in August than I will in Brazil. So. And, I'm just, the thing that concerns me is the thing that always concerns me with the Olympics is, the logistics. I need to know how I can get around. I need to know if it's going to be possible for me to get from this event to that event in the same day. I need to know if the media shuttles are working, if the public transportation is working. It's a logistical nightmare. But other than that, I'm not concerned at all.
Dave, give me a little primer on what we're expecting, I think, for the American team. I mean, Michael Phelps is involved, and obviously Ledecky, and that's going to be a big part of this. I haven't heard or seen much, or seen Wheaties boxes, or seen, Visa doing champions and bringing new stars out. Who are going to be the stars this summer? Who are the people we're going to be hearing and talking about in August?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna sort of look to the usual suspects. I mean, the female gymnasts obviously are going to be a big story to follow. The American women gymnasts in swimming, it's going to be Michael Phelps is going to be the biggest story. I mean, Katie Ledecky is going to be the best Olympian. She's probably going to win 4 gold medals and a possible 5th medal. 3 individual and a relay gold, and then one additional relay medal. But Phelps is going to be the big story for the U.S. I mean, the guy is the most decorated Olympian of all time, 18 golds, 22 overall medals, going back for one last rodeo, and he's a legit medal threat.
Yeah, where is he right now? I mean, I mean, you say legitimate medal threat. He would become the transcendent story if he does what he's done the last 15 years, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, right now it's a little difficult to measure because a lot of athletes have already had their Olympic trials across the world and have sort of what they call tapered for those events where they rest up and put up their best times. Phelps has not yet done that, so he will do that for Olympic trials, and I think by the end of Olympic trials we'll have a great idea of where he stacks up in the world. But let's just put it this way: in August of last year, when the World Championships were going on simultaneously with the U.S. Championships, and Phelps couldn't go to the Worlds because he had been suspended by USA Swimming, he put up times at the U.S. Championships that beat most of the times in the World Championships. So he ranked number 1 in the world in several events last year.
It's a great equalizer in that sport, right? The water is the water, right? Like, it's not swimming on the road or home. You jump in the pool, and if you got the times, you're going to have that opportunity to do that in Brazil, right?
That is correct. I mean, I think that he's a legitimate gold medal threat in about 3 events. That's not to say he's going to win 3 golds, but he's in the mix. So, I mean, he's going to be a phenomenal story.
Dave Sheinin, staff writer for the Washington Post, and our pal who lives here in Baltimore. That's because he's smart. Longtime Oriole chronicler, but now on the golf beat as well. I don't know that Jordan Spieth's ever going to approach the Tiger Woods realm of money and fame and all of that stuff. But, boy, that kid's done everything right from the beginning. And when you're on the back nine in a major, let's say up in Pittsburgh next week, he's a guy that I think most people root for as opposed to against. And I know Tiger Woods, we talk about Ali, had the force for and the force against. I had always rooted against Woods because I thought he was kind of cocky, and I met him once and he was kind of a jerk, so I rooted against him, and it was easy to do because he was there every Sunday, right? With Spieth, I think it's almost the exact opposite. Everyone wants to fall in love with this kid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in fact, one of the things golf is really lacking right now, I think, is that villain guy, that people love to hate, sort of. Tiger was that, obviously, for a long time. A lot of people, he was a polarizing type of guy. Sergio Garcia, I suppose, is the closer we have, but he's not exactly a big-time factor.
Not like we thought he was going to be. At one point, he was going to be the next Tiger Woods, remember?
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, he still contends, a couple of times a year in majors, it seems like, just never quite gets the job done. Obviously golf right now is dominated by this big three of Spieth, Rory McIlroy, and Jason Day. And, the really cool thing right now is that they all three of them have won tournaments in the past month or so, and, are playing at the top of their games. And, of course, going into the Memorial last weekend, all three were coming off of victories in their last events, and everyone said, this is going to be an epic confrontation at Jack Nicklaus's tournament between the three greatest golfers on the planet right now, and then, none of them really made a charge, and it was, in the end, it was a couple of no-names who came down the stretch and won it. Spieth, obviously the big story at the U.S. Open is him coming off that Masters collapse. Excuse me. And, just what that has done to him mentally. And honestly, to have seen him the past few tournaments, I don't think it's affected him that much. He just won at Colonial, which was a big pressure event for him, a Texan winning in his home state for the first time. And, that was a lot of pressure on a guy. And I think he's fine. I mean, I think it was one really bad swing or a couple of really bad swings on number 12 at Augusta on Sunday. And I think he'll get over it.
Oakmont, huh? You get to go, jump in the car and go there. You don't have to fly to Brazil for this one, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is almost a home game for me.
Well, almost. Speaking of home games, you're in Washington covering the Washington Nationals, and you did a huge Dusty Baker piece in the offseason. Boy, the Nationals have very, very quietly. Last year it was a lot about noise, and it was a lot about disappointment. They look to be in line, and I think no one's happier that the Cubs are the flavor of the month, and they have all the media and all the attention, and they're winning all the games. The Nationals have quietly put together the kind of year I think that folks expected last year.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and that's why I felt all along that in the end, when we go back and look at this season and the off season that preceded it, we're going to look back and say that the Nationals hiring Dusty Baker was the move of the off season. I really believe that team last year should have won it all, and would have won it all if it weren't for the manager. Matt Williams was an absolute disaster there. He, in no way improved the chemistry and the atmosphere in the clubhouse. And in fact, I think he served to make it worse.
What made him so bad? He was such a good player. He was such a thoughtful guy. He waited a long time to get that opportunity. He had the most talent. I thought that was going to work out better than it did. I really did.
Well, he's an uptight guy. I mean, his nickname was the Sergeant. I mean, he was a guy who ratcheted up pressure, and rather than reducing it on his players, he ratcheted it up. He's tightly wound. He seems stressed out all the time, and a team takes on the personality of its manager. I mean, think about, the Yankees teams of the 90s and Joe Torre's, cool professionalism and the way that team seemed to exude that exact thing. And think of these Orioles with Buck and his loose nature and his, his thoughtfulness and intellect. I mean, you take on the personality of your manager. And in the Nationals case, you go from Matt Williams to the polar opposite right now, Dusty Baker, who is, the coolest guy in baseball. Let's be honest. I mean, he's just cool. And
Smoke weed with Jimi Hendrix, according to the Washington Post.
he did. I mean, how cool is that, right?
Well, you had to be alive at a certain time in order to do that. Dave Sheinin,
Correct.
Joining us here, staff writer for the Washington Post, covering all things. And, of course, there is a rumor, and I think Rick May started this, that your book's really selling well in Cleveland.
What's that now?
Your book is selling well in Cleveland.
That book, yeah. Well,
the RG3 thing, I mean, that story goes on, and certainly Cleveland had a chance to draft another quarterback, and they've decided he is their quarterback, I guess. And this is quite a step out onto the plank for Hugh Jackson as well. It is.
And I firmly believe that Griffin's going to have a really good year, maybe a great year in Cleveland.
You are a fan of his, right? I mean, you wrote a book about him.
Yeah.
You like him, and you think that there's potential there. You're not shocked that the Browns have sort of thrown caution to the wind and said, maybe this is the kid.
I'm not shocked at all. I mean, I think, he's never had a coach who fully believes in him. Mike Shanahan, especially if you listen to some of his quotes recently as he distanced himself from Griffin, claims that he never wanted to give up the draft picks to get Griffin in Washington in the first place, that was a Dan Snyder move.
Well, that's probably not shocking, right, given the state of the organization, right?
Absolutely. So Shanahan never wanted him, clearly put an offense in play that, on the one hand was going to maximize Griffin's talent for the short-term gain, and it worked. It got him to the playoffs. It got him a division title. But in the long term was probably going to get the guy killed. And that did also. You blew out his knee. You cost him basically a year of his development. And speaking of development, I mean, no one ever developed him. I mean, he was never developed. He was thrown right into this college-style offense right away that did not develop him as a pro passer. And then Jay Gruden comes along and, again, clearly doesn't believe in him, pulled the plug on him as a starter after, 3 games maybe. I'm happy for Robert because I think he's got a coach in Hugh Jackson who not only believes in him, but is going to have his best interests at heart and is going to, look out for him in a way that no one has done yet in the NFL.
Orioles going to be playing postseason this year, Dave. Are you a believer in the Orioles?
I am a believer in the Orioles. And honestly, it's not because I think that they're, some kind of 100-win juggernaut. I mean, part of it is that the division is not that great. I mean, I don't necessarily see anybody winning 100 games in that division. And also, I feel like the Orioles are slowly sort of I feel like they're making small moves that if you read between the lines are building up to something a little bigger. And I think that there may be a big trade deadline deal in them this summer, which obviously they need. They need a starting pitcher. I think that's clear.
I don't know what they have to dangle, man. I saw the Shields deal happen the other day, and that was more about money than it was about talent. If you're willing to pay Shields a portion of that salary, you could have him the next 3 years. Clearly the White Sox wanted him more than anybody else wanted him. That was kind of a fascinating thing because I don't see the Orioles as having more firepower than any other team that would want a quality pitcher out in the market.
You talking about in the minor leagues and for prospects for trading?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the problems last year. Was a problem the year before last that you don't have something someone else covets. And certainly the Orioles have not been quick to give things up. I mean, watching Rodriguez, on the back end of the Andrew Miller deal a couple years ago, they don't have that kind of prospect right now, I don't think.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to pull off a James Shields or anything like that, but I do see them getting a starting pitcher this summer at the trade deadline. It may not be a number one. I'm not even sure there's a number one out there. I don't think James Shields is a number one at this point. But I think they're gonna do something, and I think they are built right now if they stay healthy to be in this thing to the end, and then anything can happen. I mean, the way they hit, the way they hit homers, and the way these last few games with the comebacks and It gives you the feeling that there is something special to this team.
Well, it's fun when they're beating up on the world champions, too, who are limping across town right now. Dave Sheinin, you can follow him out on Twitter at Dave Sheinin. That's Sheinin. And follow him all the way down to Rio for Olympic coverage, as well as to Oakmont for the U.S. Open next week as well. Sheinin, always great having you on, man. Hope to see you over Camden Yards at some point before the summer's over. At least we have relevant baseball throughout the region this year. Pretty fun year to be a baseball fan.
It really is. It's a great era, actually, to be a baseball fan in this area. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, we'll have that Machado-Harper argument here, right?
Yep, exactly.
Great having you on, Dave. So travel well, travel safe. We'll be reading your work out at the Washington Post, pal.
Okay, Nestor. Thanks a lot, man.
You got it. There he goes, Dave Sheinin, one of my favorite dudes, a Baltimore guy writing for the Washington Post, heading off to Oakmont, then heading off to Rio, and always out on Twitter. You can find me in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. And, of course, our morning newspaper hits your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It is powered up by our friends at Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. And breaking news first on the WNST tech service that happens on your phone. Anything news-related, all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. I will be in Glendon on Saturday signing copies of Purple Rain 1 and 2 from 11:30 till 2 at Black Eyed Susan. Great little gift shop there. You can Google that up. It's in Glendon. Come hungry for some chocolate. They like to fatten me up with the dark chocolate pretzels and stuff over there. We'll have that. So that's Saturday, 11:30 to 2 for Father's Day. And you can always email me, nasty@WNST.net. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, wherever you are, we are. WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.